and been rediscovered by us nowadays. And I love them because they made my life easier, or somehow improved it. And this is going back to the school. If a lot of the delivery of the instruction is going to be computer-based, there's an awful lot of past research and work done that we can capitalize on.
Exactly.
If only we knew about it.
Right.
We don't have to reinvent anything here.
And that's part of my thinking of the strategic marketing. Obviously, is one area that you've provided some input to the old school, and certainly Will would be very happy to do something like that, because I think the real power. One of his former house captains said, it's Will himself who's franchisable. You know, it's his particular method of how to advance. You know, you give just a little bit more responsibility when the kid is ready.
Yes.
And, you know, he seems to know. It's almost like if you had a camera and you were forced to watch a year of Will in his interactions, you would get the method. You know, it's almost like it's not a textbook type of thing. It's something that you'd pick up through watching. Because effectively, that's how he says it all goes back to his mom. And this is how she managed things. And it's not only the training of the students by using computers, but there's probably going to be some way that Will can quantify through story and giving enough examples so you know that, well, you might think that this is a rule, but here's 3 stories that show how I didn't follow the rule. You know, it's an accumulation of stories until you finally say, well, I know what to do with this fellow. You know, and I bet you can, sometimes he'll talk about, well, you know, I tried this once and it didn't quite work out, so let's try it a different way, and it turns out it works for this particular kid. All right, so there's one. And it's not like you can say, okay, for this particular model of car, we know that hitting the oil can, you know, some sort of part of the, fixes this particular problem. Well, I mean, kids aren't models of cars. We can't have like this rule that we just apply to them, which unfortunately is what happens in the U.S. and perhaps in other countries too. That, you know, you're 14 years old, well, this is the level of responsibility most 14-year-olds will accept, so that's where you're at. And for some kids, it's too much responsibility. For others, they're ready for something else. So, you know, it's an effort basically to provide people who've never been through an Aiglon experience or who have gone through only a boarding experience without having this sort of mindful participation. I mean, when you described what Chris Reynolds did to you by, you know, not, you know, throwing you out, not ignoring you, he found this sort of middle ground where, you know, I took it that he didn't really shout at you.
Oh no, he didn't shout at all. He was quite rational about it, and I think that even at that age, I always listened if people were rational. If they ranted and raved, I just switched off. Right.
And so there was something that, you know, and I asked Reynolds, you know, did you go through training? Did, you know, JC kind of guide you in how to, the pedagogy, how do you guide students who are 13 versus 15 versus 17? And he said, oh no, we never talked about that. So JC hired the person, but never went into their classrooms and never sat down and watched how they interacted, which is a typical way here in the U.S. They observe every step of your how you teach. If you're sitting down with a student, they want to watch and how you counsel the person. None of that by JC. So I find it interesting.
Well, the outcome was pot luck, because I know that when I was there, 64, 67, some of the teachers were atrocious,
Okay.
and some were very good. And not only were they good in their subjects, some of them were even ones whose subjects I didn't have, or who weren't my teachers. They were good in their the way they managed children.
Yeah. And effectively, we were children. Come on, let's face it. We're not just, at some level, we're children.